The views and opinions on this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of the executive producer or the sponsors. They are those of the hosts and guests only. We believe freedom of conscience means the right to speak free, to think and believe as you will without the imposition of official coercive power over those beliefs. Liberty cannot exist when people are forced to conform their thoughts and expression to an official viewpoint. Differences of opinion are the natural byproducts of a vibrant, free society. Thank you. Live from Studio Diablo in Chicago, Illinois, this is MK Ultrasound.
Get with the countdown.
I speak jive.
Forget it, man. Blast off for Kicksville. Shake this square world. Blast off for Kicksville.
I speak jive.
Forget it, man. Get with the countdown.
I speak jive.
Forget it, man. Blast off for Kicksville. Shake this square world. Blast off for Kicksville.
I speak jive.
Forget it, man.
Welcome to another meeting of the Electric Hellfire Club, where rogues and scoundrels gather with diabolical machines and infernal devices to conjure sounds and images from the darkest depths of hell. Hear demon trumpets and devil trombones evoke images of glorious evil and supreme decadence. See visions of burning sinners and devils with pitchforks torturing damned souls in a lake of everlasting fire. You are invited.
Now, some of y'all have been asking me my opinion about rock and roll music. Now, anyone who knows me knows that if you ask me my opinion about something, I'm going to give you an answer. You may not agree with what I have to say, but I'm going to tell you. Now, I firmly believe that rock and roll music is sent to us straight from the devil himself. I believe that rock and roll music has been sent to us straight from the bowels of hell. Now, I don't believe that the devil can do this work by himself. I think he has to have agents, assistants, evil agents to help spread this evil music. Now, what am I talking about? I'm talking about the likes of Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, and many, many other performers who help him spread this evil music.
Well, there's some bad eggs there. Welcome back to the MK Ultrasound podcast. Alexander here with Max Bravo.
Hey there.
And we have Thomas, the Reverend Thomas Thorn on the phone from Florida. Thomas, hello.
How are you?
Who thought 30 years ago you and I'd be having this conversation?
Well, you know what? I didn't imagine I'd still be alive at this point, so probably not me.
Yeah. Well, it's good to hear from you, man. Some exciting things coming up. I appreciate this time that you have. Let's look back on 30 years ago, Kiss the Goat came out, and that was a pretty big year for you and your band and a lot of other bands in our circle. Want to touch base on that a minute?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot going on. I think that we definitely had established the fact that we weren't going anywhere. You know, we were going to keep making records, and we had really sort of kicked and punched our way into touring opportunities, and you know, we had enough of our own following that other bands wanted us, and we also understood the the value of a band that could throw all their stuff off stage in 5 minutes and you know, do a quick turnover. So we, you know, that was really the start of. We spent almost that entire year on the road, I would say.
Right. I saw you play that show at about the same time of year, about September, at the Exit on North Avenue. And then next, you know, saw you at a couple little clubs, and next thing I know, you're doing halls with Danzig.
Yeah. I mean, we were we were definitely stepping our game up. We had a lot of good opportunities, though. I mean, you know, 95, that was the year that Typo Negative released Bloody Kisses, and you know, Peter asked us and Lycia to open on their Halloween tour. And I mean, we were in the support slot at Roseland Ballroom in New York City, which was definitely at that time, it was the biggest place we'd ever played. You know, when we showed up, we showed up with our stuff, and they're like, "Oh, you can't carry your own stuff in. This is a union hall." You know, it was like, what?
Nice.
So,
yeah. So from the club days, I remember it seemed like I saw you a lot before the Danzig thing happened. I remember getting a call from Ethan at Cleopatra. He said, "If you called Thomas to congratulate him," and I'm like, "What?" He said, "Got the Danzig tour," and I just found out that Tommy Victor had got hired by Danzig to play on that, and that was wow, that was a trip, and those were some fun shows, man. There was definitely
I mean,
shows.
you know, everybody. It's funny because people like to rip on Danzig, and they like to you know, tell stories about him and things like that. But I'll tell you right now that man was an absolute prince to us. Nobody that we ever played with, toured with, ever treated us better than Glenn Danzig did. And you know, do you know the story about how we got that tour?
Actually, I don't. Go ahead.
So it's pretty good because Brian McNellis, back when he was doing PR at Cleopatra, he said, "You know, I was in an occult bookstore the other day, and Glenn Danzig was there, and I told him that you know, I don't know if you've ever heard of this band, but they'll be playing here next month, and you might be interested." And he said, "Oh yeah, I like that band," you know, and referring to us. And I'm like, "Well, that was enough for me." So when Danzig 5 came out, he was doing signings before they were doing a tour, and I'm trying to think of what it was a Best Buy, and I want to say Greenfield, Wisconsin, like you know, rural suburban Milwaukee. And we went out there, and there was a line around the entire parking lot. It had to be like almost a mile long. And everybody's like, "Oh, dude, we can't do this." And I said, "Well, you guys can do what you want to do. I know what I'm going to do for my career." And it was freezing. We just stood in the cold outside. And when we finally got in there, you know, it's probably an hour and a half later, I walked up to the table and I said, "Hi, I'm Thomas Thorn from the Electric Hellfire Club." And Glenn Danzig stood up and said, "I'm a huge fan of your band." And all the people in the room are like looking around, and they're like, "Who the hell is that?" You know, but he literally, like, within 2 minutes looked at you know, the guy who was, I think he was just his PA, and he looked at him, he said, "Get his info. I want these guys on the road with us." And, you know, so it was one of those things where after I had looked at everybody in my band and said, "I know what I'm doing for my career. I'm going to stand out in the fucking," I'm sorry. Oh, that's right. I can say that.
Yeah, say whatever you want.
Stand out in the freezing cold, you know, just to see if I can, you know, shake Danzig loose on the possibility of an opening slot. I didn't even have to ask. He immediately offered it. So that was pretty cool for us. Everybody hates that record. I love that record. I love Dancing 5. So
cool. Before that, see, you did a string of shows. I'm trying to think. Okay, the Typo Negative thing happened, and that was really cool. I remember when Burn Baby Burn came out. He mentioned that as in his top 5 favorite records of that year, which was like, wow.
There you go.
So he was really in the know, and he's actually the one that got me into Lycia, which got me in with Project, which was a game changer for me, starting out as a new publication, which is, and then there's all of us. So that was 95. Was a pretty awesome year for music. White Zombie were really, really big. And
yeah, it's when they kind of like he went from being White Zombie to Rob Zombie, and probably had met Scott Humphreys and gotten in the studio and changed music forever. So.
Yeah. So trying to think on that first tour, who else I saw you with? Of course I didn't see the Typo one, but I remember seeing you at Circuits and Aftermath. Remember that place, Aftermath?
Yeah. Well, it's funny because you were talking about, it seems like you played a lot. We did. We actually, I want to say we played Chicago twice within 2 months, but we played completely different sets. We played one at Aftermath and we played one, I believe that you were right, that it was the second exit on North Avenue.
And you did Circuits.
So, yeah.
And but it was like nothing for us to go 3 hours, and like any reason to get out of Indianapolis, come to Chicago was a good reason. But that bar Aftermath, I loved that place. And then I moved here and it closed down, which was probably best for me that happened that way. They think about it, because I really liked that place. It was a lot of fun, and it seemed like they were always getting busted. Remember that? We'd be in there and lights would come on, and
I didn't live in Chicago at that time, so it was like,
you were there.
More of a rarity for us.
I was there one night, and you guys were hanging out, because it seemed like you and Shane and Greg and Rich were always hanging out together. I'd see you at Neo. I saw you perform at Aftermath, but then I saw you at Aftermath hanging out. It was when I came up to see Nails, and we popped in, and you guys were hanging out, and then the lights came on and the police came in. It seemed like most of the time I was there, it was getting busted. And then the thing happened with Shane, man. And wow, that's
yeah.
Do you want to touch on that at all?
Well, I mean, it was it was mid-January of '96, so it was like not that long after all the cool 1995 stuff that we were talking about, and yeah, I mean, for us, we could feel ourselves on our way up, and people were talking about it, and Peter Steele talking about it, and it was just it was a cool thing, but we knew that the next record was going to be one of those like make or break things, and we had talked to one of the guys that we'd worked with in Milwaukee, Paul Knievers, and they wanted to build a new studio in an old junkyard warehouse. And they told us how much money, and we're like, "Ooh, that's a lot of money." And they said, "But you can basically work on the record as long as you want." And which sounded like a really good deal. And we put half the money up front. And I was just trying to explain this to somebody the other day, that we made all these crazy plans. We had the recording set up. We were what was going to happen, and Chuck Lenahan who had been in Genitorturers but was in Crumbsuckers before that. We had been touring with Genitorturers, and he's like an amazing guitar player, and nothing against Greg, but Greg wasn't the kind of like flashy shredding guitar player that we wanted some of that on the record too. And we're like, oh, Greg can play on the record, then we'll have Chuck come in and add some flash to it. And we even bought him a plane ticket and everything like that. And it's how the record ended up the way that it did, because, we couldn't change Chuck's plane ticket, and our recording dates were delayed. And this sounds insane when I think about it now. It's like, I delayed recording for 2 weeks because one of the primary members of the band and my best friend got killed. 2 weeks. And So he was actually there before we had laid any tracks down. And we started tracking with him. So the songs that he actually played on were the ones that so he's actually playing the main part rather than adding flash to it. And it's funny when you talk about like me explaining to him how Book of Lies went, and I'm like, making the noises of how it's supposed to sound. And he's like, Thomas, this is just a bass line. And I'm like, no, think of Malcolm Young. And when I'm doing that, he looks at me, he goes, well, first of all, that's Malcolm, not Angus, that plays that part. I'm like, okay, then you get it. But it's just it was nuts. I mean, it was just one of those things that's the most devastating thing that you think can happen. And just what was it, like 2 years before that, my friend Boris from my power electronics band Slave State, right on the verge of us, like, oh wow, we can like maybe get signed to Wax Trax. He killed himself while I was on tour with PKK, and you think that nothing's going to be worse than that. And suicide's a horrible thing to happen. I mean, it, like, as I always tell people, it like carves a question mark into your heart. That there are so many things that you'll never know. But when somebody wants to live, there's no question about whether they're, going the life direction has it taken away. And, suddenly and tragically, that's just like, it's brutal, on everybody around them, their family, their friends, for us, I guess you'd call fellow band people their coworkers, but yeah, so. It was rough.
Yeah, I remember getting that call. That was not an easy. I remember exactly. Well, you always remember where you were when that happened, when these things happen. But you guys didn't mess around. Your first album you did it at Smart Studios, which is very, very well known at a time that it was well known, and then you did Chicago Tracks for your second record.
Right.
How much of Calling Dr. Love was already in the can by the time the accident happened with Shane?
In the can?
Was
nothing had been recorded.
Okay.
And I had most of the record written. I mean, and the thing is that, Shane would every once in a while toss me something, and I want to say that what he had tossed me for that record was the riff that became Unleash the Beast. But everything else on that record, I wrote.
And it was still psychedelic, which is what I loved about it. You have a new 7-inch coming out. What can you tell us? What do you want to say about that?
It's a new old 7-inch. Well, I mean, it's how do I say this without sounding like I'm complaining? Well, I mean, when we looked at doing this show, I had already had an agreement with my former record company, Cleopatra, that they were they're slowly but surely releasing everything on vinyl, and they had done that with Burn Baby Burn and put Satan's Little Helpers on there, and they were going to do that with Kiss the Goat for the 30th anniversary. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. Hopefully it'll be out by the time that we do this show. That's October's toward the end of the year, so I would imagine it would be. And then, now you're. I mean, it used to be that I did business directly with the president of the label, and now, Matt Green from Spawn Ranch does all the A&R stuff. But I mean, frankly, there are a million bands that are more active and better known than mine, and we're just kind of like, while we may have been one of the bands that built the label, we're pretty much an afterthought. And when I was talking to him about it, he said, oh, well, Brian decided that he doesn't want to do double vinyls anymore because they don't sell as well as the other ones. So if you can figure out how to reduce Kiss the Goat to a single disc. Now, the thing is that when you look at how long an album like Bloody Kisses is. That wouldn't even fit on a cassette tape. I remember that.
Yeah.
And it was like, it wasn't on one side of a cassette. Because it was just really long, because there was all this space that you could throw on there, and why not? And that just became the standard. So now you're trying to squeeze all that stuff onto single vinyl. All the records that we did are 3 sides of a record. And, how hard is it to just like get a couple remixes and other cool things that are kicking around out there and call it a double record. I don't care if it's a gatefold or whatever, but it doesn't cost that much more, but whatever the case, I mean, it was just, I was really, really bummed out, and rather than getting bummed out and irate these days, I just, I'm more solution oriented, and I'm like, well, what can I do that's really cool? And that was before I started selling off the publishing rights to the songs. Before they started negotiating that, if you want that much money to record a record, you have to give us half the publishing. But the first 2 records, I own all the publishing for, so I can do my own Taylor Swift if I want and re-record those records in their entirety, and and it's all mine. So I thought, hell, I'll just do a new version of Kiss the Goat. And I just poked around and I just turned 61. So I'm like one of those guys that doesn't get the whole Instagram thing. I'm still hopelessly connected to Facebook. And if you want to see me and have any sort of, social media presence, that's where it's going to be. But I put out a couple little like feelers about, what would people think about, the idea of a limited edition 7-inch with a new version of Kiss the Goat, and people went crazy for it.
Oh yeah.
I had always been very leery of the whole crowdfunding thing, because I'm like, yeah, what if you like crowdfund something and like nobody shows up? Yep. And it's like, but no, I mean, we made the goal in less than 2 days for that record. Which made me start thinking, wow, I should do another full length record. But that's a whole other topic. But yeah, so, Kiss the Goat, the song is like, it's almost 8 minutes long. It's like a psychedelic jam song. And I had to squeeze it into 4.5 minutes. And so it's condensed. It's revved up. It's got a heavier guitar riff in it. And it's got a couple surprises in it too. So, Reverend Andy Howell said, yeah, one of the guys played it for me, and that's kind of out in left field. And I'm like, I don't really think anything is out in left field for this band, because, you've got very groovy boots on the same album as Ultraviolence. You know what I mean? It's like, it runs the full gamut. We're like, playing Pantera style riffs and then there's a song that has horns. It sounds like, Sergio Mendes in Brazil 66 or something like that. So
I'm looking forward to that. I was really hoping for the purple vinyl. That record means so much to me. And I tell people the story a lot. I moved from Pittsburgh to Indianapolis on April Fool's Day, 95. I just got the advance of Kiss the Goat. That's the only CD we played driving that whole way. That's with stops to see friends on the way to Indianapolis, where we got at 3 a.m. And that was the record. That was the record of that, Bloody Kisses, and that very last White Zombie record was my 1995. And then you had, of course, the great Hey Man, Nice Shot by Filter and that. But I really want. I hope you can do. I hope you can do the double purple vinyl, man.
Well, you know what the thing is that I haven't had any sort of conversation since I did this. So I certainly didn't get a "Hey, what do you think you're doing?" call or anything like that. But at the same time, we'll see when I start poking at people to, hey, I see you're promoting other people's shows. Why don't you promote mine? And we'll see what happens. But I mean, I don't have any hard feelings. I mean, it's pretty much, it's par for the course with Cleopatra. I mean, it's funny because I was just reading. Actually, I read both of Rob Halford's books, and he talks in both books about Spinal Tap, about how, if you're a real band, all the stuff that happens in Spinal Tap has happened to you.
Yep.
And yeah, have you been the people that are out touring on a record that did not come out? Yes, absolutely. Oh, well, it's been delayed, or, and there's, I swear to God, with Cleopatra, it was always something. I mean, my absolute favorite complete catastrophe was when they decided to delete all the singles, and somebody who was assigned to do that among the interns or something like that deleted our entire catalog.
Oh my God!
Everything that we had went into the cutout bin. We had no records anymore. And that was, it was at a time for me that was pretty tenuous as far as trying to hang on to some semblance of a sense of who I was, what I'd done, where I'd been, everything like that. And suddenly you couldn't go into a record store and order our records anymore. None of them. Now they did press new versions of Kiss the Goat and Electronomicon. And here's one for you that kind of shows you along the lines of that it's always something. So if you had one of those early versions of Kiss the Goat, you could see that it had the foil imprint on it, and the print for the Scott Jackson artwork was way too dark. You could barely even see what was going on, and the foil embossing on there was just really badly done. And so 1 out of 5, was decent. And we were like, hey, what's going on with this? We didn't even get to look at the cover and approve it. And they're like, oh yeah, we know. But we can redo it. But if we redo it, we can't get the foil again. And I'm like, why? And they're like, because the guy that does the foil killed himself. And so, but the thing is, so years later, after they have deleted this album through a complete fuck up, and they put it out again, they printed the band's name in the wrong color. It was gray across the front. And they said, well, there's not really anything that we can do about it. And that was one of the few times that I said, actually, there might not be anything you can do about it, but there's something I can. And that is, it says in my contract that I have final approval. It ain't coming out like this. And they're like, oh, Thomas, come on. You know how much that cost and everything like that. And I'm like, yeah. And I also remember that you told me that the next time it was repressed, which was before you deleted my entire fucking catalog, that it would be redone right. And not only, did all the other stuff happen, you redid it wrong. So no, do it right.
All right, I'm going to take a closer look at mine after the show. I've got both. That's
maybe he's got the 1 of 5.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll play a song from the record and we'll come back. We got some more to talk about. I definitely want to talk about the first reunion show you did back in 2016. But right now on this is the Electric Hellfire Club from Kiss the Goat on the MK Ultrasound podcast.
going to burn soon.
From DSN Music, new power metal from Texas. Project Rogue is back with their new single Armistice. Armistice, the new single from Project Rogue, available today on all music download and streaming platforms. From DSN Music.
All right, we're back. Thomas, are you still with us? Hello? Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
I'm here. Sorry.
It's all right. So, man, excited. I was so excited when I came down to see you guys play again in December 2016, and that was right after the big pig face reunion. Max, you've photographed that.
That was good.
And the trip was planned, and everybody bails on me, and I end up down there by myself, but I didn't feel alone. It was great. I remember at one point, I'm on the elevator and I see this lady and a little boy wearing Hellfire Club shirts.
That's a great story.
In my hotel.
Yeah.
And I look and I said, going to the show. It's a stupid thing to ask, right? Going to the show? But I had no idea. And she said, I'm Thomas's wife. This is his son. And I'm like, wow. Okay.
She said, you got all teary-eyed. She goes, and which I think is totally cool because you're like, holy crap, Thomas Thorn is not only alive, he has like a offspring. And she comes up, she goes, do you know a guy named Alex? I said, Alexander? And she goes, yeah, that's him. And she tells me the story, and I said, no, that's good. I'm glad you guys met. So.
I remember walking around Ybor City, which I loved, and roosters in the streets. And I went to a store, and it was really hard for me to even find a bottle of vodka anywhere there. So I knew a lady, and I see her on the elevator. I'd never met her in person. I knew she was a fan. I knew she was in Florida. And I said, an extra ticket that my friends bailed on. I said, I'll give you a ticket. Can you bring me a bottle of vodka? Then I meet her on that same elevator. And we got the day to spend, and the food was so good down on that street going to the club.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
And I'm walking down the street, and there's all these people in black, and you know where they're going. And I hear MK
Straight
Ultra.
to hell.
MK Ultra. I'm like, this kind of makes sense because we wrote about your band so much in the 10 years we were in print, and there were a lot of people there that knew the magazine because of your band. And then, of course, I get to meet Jimmy Psycho in person for the first time. And I covered Psycho Charger forever. I remember my first trip to New York City, and he was still there. We were supposed to meet. It didn't happen, but I meet him in Florida. And then, of course, there's the guys in the band, and like everybody's coming down to say hi. I'm like, you know how long it's been since I've seen these, with the exception of Rick Tor.
Right.
I hadn't seen anybody other than the no-show Sabrina. And what happened with that? Did she not come at the last minute, or was she even on that show?
Yeah, we were under the impression she was coming, and then she was like, well, I'm not going to be able to make it. And, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So,
she was, everybody in your band turned out to be really good friends. I mean, pretty much everybody. Greg, I can't think of a closer friend I have in my life than Greg, and you know Greg a lot. And Max, you sent me something yesterday you wanted to bring up.
Oh yeah, I Alex said he says you're caught up in everything. Right? I'm like, I said, all of the interviews that you've done in the 30 years you guys have together, I have any music questions that I would be able to come up with that you haven't heard. So I went a different avenue. I looked up a Stranger Things Wikipedia page because, they have the Hellfire Club, and you guys are, the same origin. But in the bottom of the article, it talks about your album being released, and it says, and it was announced on MK Ultra. It's just this random fan wiki. And
wow.
And Alex was mentioned on it. He said it would have been good if they put a link to it, but they didn't. It just mentions it.
I can't believe I didn't know that the Wikipedia page for Stranger Things makes any mention of the band, because have you seen that picture for that T-shirt that I'm doing?
No, I have not. No.
Oh, dude, I got to send it to you because I finally broke down and I did a version of the Eddie Munson Hellfire shirt, but it says Electric Hellfire Club.
Nice.
And it's got instead of like the flaming sword and stuff like that, it's got guitars that are on fire. So you'll dig it.
Yeah.
And then it says join the Children of Darkness in that weird Stranger Things font on the back.
That's cool.
So.
They did a whole link on the it's like one of those almost like a conspiracy theory rabbit hole type of page. It was funny because they had a picture of 11 in a black and yellow top, and then it showed your album cover that's black and yellow, and then it goes.
Oh, that's great.
And then it goes on. And it carries on, and then it finally gets to that. Alex announced the release on MK Ultra.
Dig this. She apparently has a house not that far from where we live, the actress. So, I live in a part of Florida where, not that I am, but there are a lot of ultra rich people in certain parts of the city here. So, it's not that surprising, but yeah, I thought that's just another connection.
Right,
but yeah, I mean that I've had everybody in the whole world going, dude, isn't that your band that I just saw the T-shirt at Walmart? It's like, no, I'm afraid not. So.
I still have to educate people on the origin of the actual Hellfire Club. And with that, I just watched Dean Norris from Breaking Bad play Benjamin Franklin on a show I've been watching for 2 days. And, I know Ben Franklin was a bit of a
honorary member of Dashwood's Hellfire Club for sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of old tours, so the Guar tour, that had to be fun. I know we had fun with you guys down there in Kentucky. 4th of July.
Yeah, no, I mean we had a lot of fun, and I think they did too. And I think that it's funny because we were so seasoned in what we did, that we always traveled in a 16-passenger van with the back 2 seats taken out, and we got hotel rooms, and they weren't, we started going up from Motel 6 to like Super 8 and better things than that as time went on, but yeah, I mean the value of like even 3 hours in a real actual bed as opposed to like, in a bunk on a tour bus, was always something that we placed tremendous value on. And, but there's a lot that you sacrifice that way. And for us, we had a lot of rules about what you could and couldn't do in the van because it was like communal living space. But, we would, while we were on tour with Guar, we had cocktail hour at the same time every day. We would show up, we'd do our sound check, which, we did ultra fast and very painless for everybody. And the guys from Guar used to start coming out in the parking lot, and like Dave Brocky coming in, he's like, "Is it cocktail hour?" And we're like, "Yes, it is." And he's like, "Oh, good. Can I? Yeah, man, come on in." and literally like everybody's sitting on like bench seats looking, toward the front, listening to music and talking but even like, Brad, the drummer, he started riding with us in the van, between shows, because they just wanted to get away from like, the life that they had. I mean, why you would want to, jump in on ours. It was pretty interesting, but yeah, no, we got along really, really good with those guys. And, yeah, I mean, it's funny because I went to see them, in Madison, Wisconsin. And I think that at the time that I saw them, I'd probably been sober about 2 years at that point. And, I probably looked substantially different. Like, I probably didn't have yellow in my eyes and didn't look like I was going to like die, any second. But they were like looking at me going, holy crap, dude. What are you doing? When I say that, keep doing it, whatever it is. And then, it was funny. And I just, I told them and they were like, holy shit, dude, that you look great. But, yeah, so it was interesting. And it's tough when you look at those situations like that and, and it's, you think about that people just keep going and keep going and keep going. And a guy like Dave Brock, he just, drank a little and, did a little shit that he shouldn't have been doing at his age and did not wake up. So that's a huge loss. He was an incredible guy.
Right. Back to the Florida show. One of the things that made me feel really good for you and your family was your son got to see what you used to do.
Sort of, yeah.
And then when you went off and then came back with your head shaved at the end, I'm like, holy fucking shit. How cool is this for your son to see you do what you did every night for how many years?
You know how many people didn't realize that happened? I mean, I was stunned. It's like, dude, I had a pink mohawk and then I was bald. Well, I just thought that, and it's funny because where I got that from is when I was, when I was 17, I had a job polishing shoes at a shoe repair place. And this guy used to tell me all these stories about these, like, hippie type bands that he'd go see. But he was telling me stories about Peter Gabriel with Genesis and what a madman Peter Gabriel was. And he said, that they finished a show and then he went backstage and he completely shaved his head. And then he came out and he was like on wires and he like flew over the audience completely bald. And I'm just like, wait, he went backstage and shaved his head before the encore. And that always stuck with me. And I was probably 17 when I heard that story. And then, years later, I did it myself. So
yeah,
I didn't fly wires over the audience, though.
Would you just have clippers back there? You said somebody shaved my head, or did you do it yourself? That was
no. I did it myself. I had it planned. So I was skinhead for years, so it's like can shave my head in like in no time at all. So
you've had a lot of different looks.
I have
so many and stories. Are you going to do a book at all? You ever thought about that?
Yes and no. Everybody always says that. Like I'll like really, really write out one of these stories, and someone's like, "Dude, you need to write a book." But and part of me says in all my extra time. But the other thing is that I'm not sure exactly. I don't want to. You see people write books, and they really just paint the one side of it. For me, my story, is pretty dark, but at this point, in theory, it comes out as a redemption story in some ways. But I think that I need to, drag it along a little bit more before I decide if that's something that I really want to do. But yeah, I mean, I'm if nothing else, I'm a storyteller, and I drive the guys that are the current members of the band crazy, because I'm like, it reminds me of a story.
Right.
Rehearsal is always like, but for them, it's like, there are a couple of guys in there that these are the first bands that they've ever been in, and so that listening to stories of me talking about hanging out with bands that they've looked up to and things like that, doing crazy stuff with them is pretty amazing. But yeah, I mean, and like you said, I mean, part of it is that I would like for to leave something behind for my kid, and it's funny that you bring it up, because I don't think he was still there when the show was over, but or he might have been there till but he at that point in his life, he did not like loud noises, so he had noise canceling headphones on that he was wandering around with.
Okay.
So I'm not sure that he really knows exactly what I did. I mean, you can ask him now. And he's like, oh yeah, my dad was like, my dad was a rock star, and I'm like, your dad was a low level rock star, not a rock star. But but yeah, I mean, he has some sense of it. So
speaking of stories, and then there's some more things I want to bring up later, and I want to talk about the new band, Incubus. I had chosen the remix, and you told me a little story that you really didn't like the version that they put out. Can you share that with everybody?
Yeah. So, when Burn Baby Burn came out, I mean, Cleopatra was really sort of just getting their feet wet with the whole quote unquote industrial thing. And I'd been there, done that, and was over it. I had left, my Life with the Thrill Kill Cult at their peak. To go do something else. I'd seen a bunch of the in quote unquote industrial stuff, and I came into that stuff through the back door from what I call real industrial. Your Throbbing Gristle, your SBK, White House, all that stuff. That was like the industrial that I really enjoyed. And yeah, because I was like really into electronic music, I enjoyed, a lot of the stuff that was coming out through Wax Tracks. And, nothing against the music that was made, but I mean, had you, told me to list the top 5 bands on Wax Tracks that I would join in a heartbeat if I was asked to do it, My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult would not have been in that top 5. It just happened that way.
Got it.
And I think for them, I was never that strong a part of the creative process, and it's why I needed to go do something else. So, when we signed with Cleopatra, I wasn't trying to be an industrial band. It's funny because people say, oh, well, like 3 albums later, you went metal. And I'm like, dude, have you not heard Burn Baby Burn? I mean, sure, the guitars are lower in the mix, but the thing is, there's metal guitar all over that record. And, that what we were doing was just kind of a hybrid of a lot of different things. Sure, there was some industrial dance sound. There was some metal stuff. There was, but there was serious guitar riffage, all of that stuff. And it's really, right before all of a sudden Ministry turns around and it's like Ministry's not making Twitch. Ministry's making like, Land of Rape and Honey or and goes from that to Mind is a Terrible Thing to Taste, where it's just like, it's all pure, like hammering guitars, like guitar upon guitar upon guitar. And, and people are like, oh, I guess it is industrial or whatever. But I mean, we had people just absolutely just livid about the idea that Electric Hellfire Club was being called an industrial band. They're not industrial. They have nothing to do with what any of the rest of us are doing. And, the president of the label, Brian Pereira, didn't get that. That I wasn't interested in being lumped in with all that stuff. I didn't want to tour with those bands. I didn't want to do any of that stuff. I wanted to really just kind of continue to be who we were. And that trajectory is how we ended up, playing with everybody from Danzig to Typo to Guar to Fear Factory to, whoever, Godflesh. I mean, just that, we didn't necessarily sound like any of those bands, but it was not completely incongruous to put us on the bill. So I know I've gone really far afield from this story, but anyhow, when Burn Baby Burn comes out, Klaus Larson from Leatherstrip was apparently visiting the U.S. and Brian Pereira plays the record for him, and he didn't like it. And Brian calls me and says, "Yeah, I played your record for Klaus Larson." I said, "Oh, what did he say?" He said, "Well, too many guitar," and I'm like, "I'm sure he did, but more power to him with whatever he thinks that it should sound like." And then they decided to have him do a remix from the next record, and which I never would have. That's not who I would have chosen to do a remix, and I'm still kind of like baffled by the idea of if somebody asked me to do a remix and I sang on their record. I mean, I was just like, when I heard it, I'm like, are you kidding me? Dude thinks that he's going to add vocals to my song. So no, I'm not a fan of that remix at all. Lots of people love it, and they say, "Oh, it's my favorite Electric Hellfire Club song." But and there are like more definitive versions. I mean, the DJ Psychofuck version of Hellfire is just absolutely slamming. He had a way with a mix and a drum beat that I did not have. But I'm trying to think what Ramel from Raised in Black did that he did a really good job. But even like, that weirdo version of He Who Holds the Lightning Rod that Matt Green from Spawn Ranch did is really weird, but I love it. I think it sounds really good. But again, I don't hear any of those other people singing on my record. So.
Well, let's play the album version instead of the. I was going to play the remix, and I'm guilty because I play that in clubs a lot, and it's good for clubs. But I was unaware until you told me that was Klaus Larson singing on that. So
yeah, well,
wow.
It's just him going incubus, incubus, come on, incubus, and it's like whatever, dude. So.
All right, well, here
apparently
you go.
I didn't say the word enough times in the song for him. So.
Yeah, he does it quite a bit. All right, well, this is Incubus on the MK Ultrasound podcast.
had parents explain to me, well, I let my teenager listen to rock music because that's all he'll listen to. Let me tell you, so the lyrics to real rock music is nothing more than satanic cyanide. Get it out of your house, throw it out, and burn it. It has no place in the house of the righteous.
Kicking off the summer of 2025, DSN Music drops new music from Subsonic, featuring veteran guitarist Ron Marks from Celtic Frost. It's Velvet Valley. The new single Velvet Valley from Subsonic. Download it today. Apple Music, Amazon, Spotify, and your favorite music platform from DSN Music.
All right, we're back with Thomas Thorn and Max Bravo. And Thomas, I think we should say hello to our friends across the pond that's running your unofficial fan club.
Oh, yeah. Carl Mullen.
Yeah, Carl. He writes to me
Carl.
He writes to me a couple times a day. Hi, Carl.
Yeah.
Just thought we should give him a shout out. Also, want to say thanks to JSIN Harmon in Indiana, who's been doing a lot of production work for us.
Unholy roller himself.
Yeah. He's gonna love that. It's a little bit better than Sex on Wheels.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, and taking a different track. And speaking of tracks, rolling. Years ago, I used to listen to this radio program when I was working, and there was this guy who had people call in, and he would exorcise demons from them. You know who I'm talking about. The Reverend Bob Larson.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
I never heard you on his show, but did you physically, in person with him, or were you radio with him?
Oh yeah, no, I was physically in there for 2 of his regular shows, and then I was flown out for the Satanic Summit as well when they were creating a pilot for trying to sell for a TV series that never went anywhere. So
okay.
Bob Larson. I think those were available on YouTube, aren't they?
I'm sure they are.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
I have to look those up. But that was an interesting show. People would call in and make noises and blah, 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 bark, and then he would pray the devil out of them.
Knowing Bob, there's probably a paywall in order to look at the old episodes. But then again, I'm really sorry that I missed out on the era where his 2 daughters got involved, because the Hellfire Club and Bob Larson's daughters would have been like, that would have been a pilot that would have sold, I think. So.
Oh, that guy, he did a lot of favors for you that I don't think he realized he was doing. What's the old saying? The best friend the church ever had was Satan, or something like that.
Absolutely. I mean, and he understood the symbiotic relationship between what we did and what he was doing. He knew full well that I played into it. I mean, we have that song that's called "Bring Me the Head of Bob Larson," and that was simply because I was messing with him where he had come to see us at this place called the Catacombs in Denver, and this is before we even had a record contract. And he said, "Well, when I was there at your show last night, I felt unsafe. Do you think that people would have hurt me?" I said, "Oh yeah, there were people in the back that were shouting, 'Bring me the head of Bob Larson!'" And he just runs with it. He goes, "You hear that, folks? Bring me the head of Bob Larson. That's what we're dealing with here. I need you to send that $500 pledge right now." So it was, you can't write this stuff.
I missed the, at the time, because I got really very, very involved in actually as a writer, I began in the 80s while I was in college when the PMRC dropped. But I missed the Satanic Panic because that was, looking back, that was a lot of fun. Just how ridiculous it was in AC/DC.
Well, I mean, speaking as a guy that lived in a town where, at the tail end of the Satanic Panic, they started, showing up and searching my house without warrants and things like that and saying, "Oh, we don't need a warrant because there's a missing child in the city right now, and we have reason to believe that you're involved."
Wow.
So it wasn't funny to me.
Okay. Where do they get After Christ, Devil Comes, and even Knights in Satan's Service? How do you think these things up? It blows my mind.
It's marketable.
Well, but think of the backward masking stuff. I mean, that it's just kind of like when you have abstract patterns on wallpaper, and you're like, gosh, man, and even when you're not on acid looking at it, it's all of a sudden it looks like faces. Your mind wants to, make something out of something that otherwise makes no sense. And it's funny because think about what happened to Judas Priest, where they were saying that, they told these kids to kill themselves with backward masking. And, and Halford in his book, he talked about the fact that, we brought backward masking in. If you played it for people, it said things like, and the chair is red and by the door. It's like you can, just because you think you can hear one thing on something doesn't mean that it means anything, because you play any song backwards and it will sound like it's saying something. But it's insane what the people. But then again, you look at the people that you're dealing with, and they're basically people that can make the Bible say whatever they want it to.
True.
That they find some way to interpret it that goes along with it. It's funny because you see Christians with that are covered with Christian tattoos out there campaigning against gay people, and it's the same chapter, Leviticus, where it says, a man shouldn't sleep with a man, that says that you shouldn't put ink under your skin. So, but one is bad, one's not the other, and it's interesting. I read something recently where a true biblical scholar said, well, that's one interpretation of that, but basically what that passage in Leviticus says is not a man shouldn't lay with another man. It says a man shouldn't lay with young men, and what it's meaning is that these old guys shouldn't be molesting young men. And it's like everybody can get behind that, but people want them. They all have their own agendas. So
agendas. The new band. You've got a new band, and you have a show coming up, Devil's Night in Tampa. How close is the venue's the same name? But it is. They moved location, so how far from Ybor City? It's
out of Ybor. I think that rent got too high in Ybor because it's like everybody else. It's gotten gentrified. But, we played in Ybor for years and years and years and years. But the Orphan was such a huge venue. But I've not been in the new one. I'm mildly nervous about it because that if we end up playing inside, it's a much smaller stage and it's pretty low to the ground. And it's one of those ones where I was like, this is going to end up with me having to knock somebody off.
Oh no.
Yeah. Well, I like to say I'm not that guy anymore, but at the same time, it's just, there are some things that never change, but, no, I think it'll be a good show, regardless of what happens. But quite frankly, the last reunion show 9 years ago was an utter nightmare for me. I may not have let that slip completely, but the reason it's been so long is because I was reminded of absolutely every reason why I had walked away from it 10 years before that. So,
yeah, I know exactly what you mean. That was a big room. I thought it was. Max, there was no seating. It was like all open, and the bar was in a really weird place for a venue that big. I thought the way it was laid out was strange. So maybe the new place will be better. Who are the new who's the new band, and what do you guys got going on?
So, I'll introduce them that night, but basically they're local musicians that knew who the band was, were interested in it. And this is a show that I got dragged into kicking and screaming. I mean, I was like, no, I don't do shows anymore. And it's like, no, but well, what if you did this? What if you did something completely different? What if you, instead of like trying to, fly people in and, rent a rehearsal space and try and make your old gear work and everything like that, why don't you do something that is more from a standpoint of actually playing the songs, and that sounded very, very appealing to me. But we've been rehearsing since February, and, there came a point where I was like, you know what, I'm going to have to, make some changes and make some moves in order for this to be a version of the Hellfire Club that I feel confident about and happy with. And I do, but, I moved away from, it's just going to all be, rock instruments and interplay between those instruments to, I've got the heavy electronics in there. I mean, one of the guys that I was introduced to is a very interesting character. I call him Professor Kane, and he's 26 years old, and he's been programming electronic music since he was 13. He does everything from the most, outlandish trip hop type stuff on up through, and has exposed me to a lot of different stuff, but it's been an absolute pleasure sitting in the studio working with him and putting our very different minds together, but even rehearsing in Reverend Andy Howell's soundproof garage with a bunch of rock musicians. It's about the first time in 30 years that I've actually enjoyed playing music again. And you heard that right, 30 years. So it's been about as long as since, the Reverend Dr. Love's death that I actually enjoyed doing this. I mean, it felt like I had to do it and I didn't know what else to do. And I really was on this mission to kind of like make sense of his death by making the band bigger and more successful and things like that. But the idea, like I said, when I look back and I'm like, oh, good, it's like your best friend in the world that died. So by all means, take 2 weeks off. It's like I'm like you look up the term unprocessed grief in the dictionary, and there's actually a picture of me. So.
Yeah, I saw all of that, man. I was there. You've got new music, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to. You're going to hear some different versions of some of the old songs, but I'm not debuting any new music at this show other than I'm playing a cover that nobody's heard me play.
Okay.
But yeah, no, and I have songs that have been sitting around waiting to be, performed and recorded since, I stopped doing this 20 years ago, and some of them may make the cut, but absolutely, I'm making new music, and I think that's a really cool thing that came out of this.
Do you still write?
Definitely.
Do you still write? Do you still do a lot of lyrics? Like as a family man, as a father and husband, are you still a songwriter? Do you still have that habit?
I'm a songwriter. No. I have a tendency to write narrative prose more than anything else, and a lot of it is stuff that are my experiences or my opinions about things and stuff like that. But can I write that stuff? Absolutely. And I think that it's funny because with a lot of the things that have been happening, there are days when I've wanted nothing more than just to, like, you know, put everything else that I'm doing down, put my boots back on, and get out there and, you know, and sing songs like Age of Fire and Unholy Roller and things like that, because I didn't think that I'd have to do it again, but you know, apparently we've backslid enough that you know, the the religious fanatics want to control everything and take a lot of rights away. So if that's going to happen, I'm certainly going to make a lot of noise in the process, even in my 60s. So here I am.
All right, that's good to know. All right, we're going to play another one from the Kiss the Goat record from 1995. This one also has Sabrina Satana on the vocal. Love the lyrics on this one. When I first heard it, I'm like, did she just sing that?
She did. She did. And but again, you know, that's my writing too. And, you know, me talking with her and saying, you know, do you want to sing that? Do you have any problem? No, that's great. But I'm sure if she was on the show today, she'd say, "Oh my gosh, I'm so horrified listening to that now." But at the same time, she's also, the last time I was talking to her about the band at all, when I was offering, you know, to see if she wanted to come play at this show, she was talking about how you know, all these kids are into stuff from the 90s now. You know, that's like their like retro stuff that they're into. So, and you know, one of her famous actor friends has a daughter that's really into EHC. So
yeah, that's cool. That's good to know. She's she's something else, man. Love talking to her when I do, but we'll play the song. We'll come back, and I want to talk about your sobriety of 20 years. Once again, this is the Electric Hellfire Club on the MK Ultrasound podcast.
rock and roll has got to go.
They want to try to justify their strobe lights and their weird wild suits and their pink hair and their yellow hair and singing their rock songs and smoke bombs going off.
Rock and roll music and why I preach against it, and I believe with all of my heart that it is a contributing factor to our juvenile delinquency of today. I 100% believe it. Why I believe that is because I know how it feels when you sing it. I know what it does to you. And I know the evil feeling that you feel when you sing it. I know the lost position that you get into in the beat. Well, if you talk to the average teenager of today and you ask them what it is about rock and roll music that they like, the first thing they'll say is the beat, the beat.
Every great day starts with a cup of get the fuck out of bed coffee from Martin Atkins and Dark Matter Coffee. Go to darkmattercoffee.com. Look for the big red logo that says get the fuck out of bed. America runs on damage, and it all starts with a cup of get the fuck out of bed coffee. There are 10 commandments and there are 7 deadly sins, but there is only one MK Ultra magazine. Visit us daily online at www.mkultramagazine.com for entertainment news, reviews, and interviews. mkultramagazine.com, home of Alexander's Diary of a Damned Man. That's mkultramagazine.com.
All right, now it's time for the uplifting, happy part of the show. Thomas Thorn, sober. How about it? 20 years?
20 years, yeah.
Congratulations.
Man, I remember hanging with you guys.
Not a lot of people could. When we recorded in England, we stayed in a village of 22 people.
Okay.
And there was one pub there, and they told us the first night we were there that Americans couldn't hold their liquor. We proved otherwise.
I'm sure you did.
So, when we stopped in the pub the next day, the woman that was her husband ran the pub. She's there and she goes, "What did you do to me husband last night?" Like, drank him under the table. So
yeah. I mean, you're pretty much known for it. And it was a lot of those times were a lot of fun. There was a lot of fun times. There was a lot of really crazy times.
Absolutely,
always seemed like something happened. What was your moment? When did you decide, hey, I'm not going to do this anymore?
So things were spiraling down, and a lot of it was economic. That there, we went through the whole Napster thing, and I mean, I went from having my own section at Best Buy. And living very well and easily off of the royalties that were coming in, and it's hard to explain to people that when now everything is streaming and downloads and things like that, but at a time when it was all about the physical copies, and the reason that you toured was and you would go out and you would lose money touring and hopefully sell enough T-shirts to pay for Motel 6. But it would turn into record sales. And, but suddenly that market where you sold 10 to 15 copies of your CD, now you sold one, and that guy burned a copy for everybody. Or they were all trading the files, things like that. And everybody, bought into the lie that oh, well, we're sticking it to the man. The middleman is the record company. And it's like, well, where is the actual artist getting the money then? So yeah, I mean, we went from being just fine to barely treading water. And, and for me, the solution to all that stuff was, I'll just drink more. And I had a lot of physical problems too. It was getting more and more painful for me to walk. And we would joke about things like, say, oh, well, once you get your hip replacement like Eddie Van Halen did. But it's the only thing that made it, not hurt as much to walk was to drink more. But that ultimately, I mean, I certainly was no stranger to getting arrested while intoxicated, but you know, then it became something that was happening more and more, and I was crashing cars, and I was, you know, doing all sorts of stuff like that, and you know, I got a DUI while I was court ordered for drug counseling. So I reached a point where I was like, you know what, if I'm going to stay out of jail, because there was certainly a district attorney that looked at me and said, if we don't put this guy away for 2 years, he's going to kill somebody. And he was probably right. But at the time, you know, I was just like, oh, another person that has it in for me. But I went into treatment to look better to a judge. And I went into a 60-day program, and but I stayed for 90 days. And it was probably a little over, it was right about the 30-day mark that I ended up going into the infirmary because my head hurt so bad it felt like somebody was jamming knitting needles into my brain. And the doctor looks at me and he goes, well, that's what we call a hangover. And I said, dude, I haven't had a drink in 30 days. And he said, yep, it's taken that long for all the alcohol to get out of your system.
Wow.
And so it took a while longer for me to really start to embrace the possibility that I may never be able to drink again. You know, and while I was in treatment, I wouldn't go to AA because it was, you know, it was a faith-based program, and you know, and I could do whatever I wanted as long as that it was something. And, you know, so I was reading books called Resisting 12-Step Coercion while everybody else was at an AA meeting and things like that. But I got out of that program. I stayed sober for about 6 months, and that's when I decided that I was cured and I could start trying to drink just a little bit here and there. But you know, I thought of a lot of things that I wanted to do better, how I wanted to be better, and things like that. But I could drink a drink, and I could drink 2 drinks. But if I drank that 3rd drink, I went from, you know, someday I'm going to do this. I'm going to, you know, go back to school and get a teaching certificate and actually, you know, make a contribution to society and things like that. And if I had a 3rd drink, it would be like, who the hell do you think you're kidding? You're nobody. You're just like, you know, you're a washed up, you know, used to be, you know, B-level rock star. And so I bounced around for probably the next year. And but a lot of the problem, you know, and people will tell you that if they're trying to get sober, and you know, all the counselors will say, oh, well, geographical cures don't work. Well, when you live across the street from your favorite bar and next door to a liquor store,
mm-hmm.
In the state that has the most bars per capita of any in the United States, it's hard to stay sober. And I decided I needed to completely change my life. And I started looking at all these different things that you know, weird places. I thought about moving to Salt Lake City. I thought about moving to San Antonio, Texas. And I ended up reading a book called Quit Your Job and Move to Key West as I landed in a snowstorm in Madison, Wisconsin. I said, you know what, I'm going to do this. And I did, and people think, oh my God, in a town, you got sober in Margaritaville? And I'm like, yeah, you know, I did, because the thing is that you know, part of what I hated about the you know, sober meetings and stuff like that was that you couldn't talk about, like, you know, if you went to an AA meeting, oh my gosh, God forbid you should talk about, you know, using narcotics or anything like that. And my story was not just certainly alcohol was my drug of choice, but there were a lot of other things involved with it.
Mm-hmm.
And, and it was a program based around the idea of well, you need to knock your ego down. And it's just like, dude, I just spent the last 10 years with the size of my paycheck was commensurate with the size of my ego. And it's going to take a little bit more than some blue book to convince me that that's not the right way to live. And every time somebody comes up and says, well, what you really need to do is get on your knees and ask God to take that desire to drink away. It's funny because, I got sober against all odds. But I met some really cool people, that, really, it didn't matter, what I had done or who I'd been or anything like that. I had one guy that kept saying, man, I'd really like to hear some of your music. And I said, John, I would fear for your immortal soul if you ever listened to my band. And he looks at me and he goes, you know me as a guy who's sober that goes to church now, but I'm going to tell you something. And he starts explaining to me that about how he went to prison because he was smuggling opium out of Afghanistan before the Soviets got there.
Oh wow!
And he's telling me this, and he said, "Of course, I always made a stop in Amsterdam." And there was a place there called the Church of Satan. We used to sit there and we'd bounce quarters off the bar trying to get it into the pussy of the naked girl that was spread out behind the bar. Now, for anybody that doesn't know the trivia, the only time that there was an actual place known as the Church of Satan was in Amsterdam. Anton LaVey, basically licensed the name to this, crazy guy that ran a sex club and called it that. This guy, there's no way for him to have known this unless he was there doing exactly what he said he was. So it's been a strange trip, but it's funny because when I lived in the Florida Keys for a decade, and they'd get somebody coming into one of the clubhouses at an AA meeting saying that would say, look, I need to get sober, but I can't do this God thing that you guys keep trying to force on me. And if it was a hard case that really wanted to get sober, somebody would call me up and say, Thomas, can you come down and talk to somebody for us? And there are a couple people, one of them that I personally drove the guy and put him into an emergency room and convinced the people that he was a danger to himself, and he ended up getting into a program and staying sober. He's now a sober coach for some pretty big rock bands.
That's great.
He had suffice it to say that he had played drums for a band in Boston that was pretty big at one point. So I was somebody that I connected with him on a variety of levels, and that we knew a lot of the same people and stuff like that. But yeah, and it's one of those things where he still calls me sometimes. He's like, you sure you don't want to go on the road and to try and keep some crazy rock stars sober? And I'm like, no, I do not want to do that. So, but at this point now, 20 years later, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of people that I've done my best to help. Some I've been successful with, and some I haven't. But I think that for me, I stopped drinking the day before I died. Is the way that I look at it.
Okay.
And because I was right there. I was a guy that when I got up in the morning, I couldn't drink water without throwing up. I used to have to drink 2 fingers of straight whiskey in order to put my body to a point where it wouldn't throw up water. So, and it takes a lot to get to that point.
Oh, I'm sure.
But,
I'm sure.
But I drank for a living. And that was the thing, is that, everybody talks about the crazy stories and everything like that. And it's just like that everybody wanted that stuff to happen until it, like, somehow, they got shit on them in the process of, they were too close to it when it happened. But the thing was, is that, I go to jail for public intoxication in New Orleans. I just, I sell more records when something like that happens. It was not, there wasn't something that was making it, there wasn't a deterrent factor from the stuff that I was doing. So, but I absolutely fully believe that I don't have another drunk left in me, but I really didn't imagine that I would enjoy life or, like, have fun, be happy, do cool stuff, without drinking in the process. And now I can't imagine, how I ever really truly believed that drinking was actually making stuff fun for me, because it really wasn't. I was a pretty broken person for a very long time. So
I follow you regularly, and I enjoy watching your new life, and you certainly look happy. This conversation leads me into something I wanted to talk about. Now, I went to visit Max last week to watch the Devo documentary on Netflix, and I said I wanted to talk to you about this, and this involves a close friend of yours. He was a friend of mine, very close to yours, Peter Steele. And this is what gets me. I never knew when he was on coke or anything else, but I knew when he was drinking. And you can see that in the videos. I mean, there's somewhere, man, he is gone. But a great guy. And what gets me is, how he was, and I still have the things he wrote for the Fifth Path, how much he was, into the more the Anton LaVey side of the Church of Satan that you are, than the way the cartoonish character that Marilyn Manson made it to be. Peter went to Rikers and then got sober, and okay, I get that, but for him to find God, it just blew my mind. And I wanted to ask you, did you talk to him after he got sober when he found God?
We didn't talk at that time, and the thing is that I'm not going to say, well, I don't think that's exactly what happened.
Right.
But, it's hard to go back through and look at a bunch of interviews and listen to him say a bunch of things, because Peter also was a consummate liar. And there are a lot of girls all over this country who will testify to how special he made them feel, and the truth of that. But yeah, when he needed to, as far as being called on, oh well, you wrote a song about this. Oh, it's not about that at all. But do I think he was lying about the God thing? No, I think that he needed a spirituality. And the thing is that I've always been a spiritual person, and the obvious question that comes into that is, well, does that mean you actually worship the devil? No, but do I think that there's a life force? Do I think that I have seen evidence that there's life after death, or there's something that our energy moves on in a way? Absolutely, but I think that do I think that Peter found God there? No, I don't. I think that I think he was broken by the experience, and you have to, as somebody who knew him, you have to look at some of those videos and say it doesn't even sound like him talking. That, and I can see that some of it is medication, but I do wish that I would have spoken with him. But the thing is that I've written I've written quite a few things about, my recollections, my experiences with him, and, the whole thing of like getting the note from him that said, "Thomas, please call." And I couldn't do it, because I didn't want to talk to somebody that, I had too much to lose, I guess is where I was at. And, that if what that translates into is that my grasp on my own sobriety, who I was, what I was, everything like that was that tenuous. Absolutely it was. And I'm trying to remember that, if that was what, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years in, something like that. And I needed to not have connection with that world. I mean, I moved to the very end of the earth. I mean, I lived closer to Cuba than to the nearest Walmart, for 10 years. So, and I needed to go somewhere where there was never going to be somebody that walked up and said, "Hey, aren't you Thomas Thorn from Electric Hellfire Club?" Now, oddly enough, I was at the public supermarket on Big Pine Key toward the end of my stay there, and I had an Electric Hellfire Club shirt on because it was laundry day, and some guy walked up to me and said, "Hey, I heard that guy lives down here somewhere."
Wow.
So,
what gets me is I always, and I try to, I don't really get an answer to this question or this. I don't even know if it's a question, but I don't understand why AA thing has to be so Christian based. And
so it doesn't have to be Christian based, and the whole thing is that they, if you look at it from a purely scientific standpoint, Carl Jung was consulted at one point, and he's quoted in the literature, and in AA they call it a spiritual change, but Jung called it a psychic change, and that is that you have to completely, you have to have a psychic break with who you were, what you did, who you believed you were. You have to have a transformation. Something has to completely, significantly, and profoundly change. And for your average person, the only way that they can relate to that is a religious or spiritual experience. But in the, sister program to AA, which is NA, they don't call it a spiritual change. They call it a psychic change. They use that terminology.
Okay.
Now, for me, I thought, oh, maybe this will work better for me because, NA also embraces alcohol as a drug. But the other thing is that, someone's going to kill me for this. But the thing is that I saw more, it's like a Sopranos episode where basically, NA meetings is like where, they're like hookup places.
Right.
I saw more people that were going to those meetings because they were trying to hook up, and whether that be for sex, romance, or drugs. There was a lot of that stuff going on, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that I don't think I remember being at an NA meeting at one point, and I had 2 years of sobriety, and I was the person with the most sobriety in the room.
Wow.
And that's problematic for people that need some sort of like stability, and they need an example. And some days I look at it and I say I got sober out of spite, because people used to say things like, well, Thomas, maybe someday if you ever have double-digit sobriety, and I was like, fuck you, I'll get double-digit sobriety. You just wait and see. And, so now I've got, but of course the people that said that shit are dead now. But not that I necessarily needed to wave it in their face. But yeah, for me, there were a handful of people that I met that had what I wanted, and, that I could talk to in a way that mattered. I still, I'm at great odds with a lot of the way that, people, and the thing is, it's not even necessarily AA. It's the people that do the meetings. Because there are certainly Muslim chapters of AA. There are ones that are built around, the Judaism, or, there are even, you probably have to go to places like New York City, but I'm sure there are atheist meetings of AA too. But at the same time, it definitely is connected with that stuff. And at the end of the day, as much as I, take exception to a lot of it, it did save my life. It absolutely saved my life. And it made it possible for me to do all the stuff that I'm doing today. So
good. I'm glad. I'm glad that we still have you here. All right. Are you ready to play the game?
Sure.
All right. We've got a guest who's going to jump in on this one, Melita. But when she gets back to the table, but we'll just start right now with this bit.
Their 100-city tour has met with controversy reminiscent of the 60s.
Well, it might be the devil, or it might be the Lord, but you're gonna have to serve somebody.
There were picket lines in Nashville, a record-breaking protest in Little Rock, a standing-room-only city council meeting in Corpus Christi, and headlines all over the country: Minneapolis, Dubuque, Chattanooga, and Bismarck, North Dakota. The protesters are mainly religious groups who have been trying unsuccessfully to get KISS concerts stopped because they say KISS promotes the worship of Satan.
This is one of the ways that the enemy is coming in to try to engulf the minds of these teenagers and win them over.
Oh, man, KISS Satanic. That's funny. All right, well, the way it works is, I'm sure Max will start with a question. You ask a question. If my lady gets back here, she'll ask a question. Is she there? Melita. All right, well, we'll start. Max? Hey, did you know that Johnny and Kenny were really big KISS fans? Are big KISS fans, Thomas?
What, in Typo? Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
they have a party every night. I was like, in the last couple of times I hung with them, they would have KISS parties and a KISS cake backstage. And Johnny still does that with Danzig. Just I don't know. It's they Kenny and Johnny start singing, and it's just like a KISS party after. And not that I'm surprised, but you don't think of like Typo Negative and KISS having that much in common. But I guess everybody from that era is a KISS fan.
You also have to remember who those guys were before they were into Typo. I mean, the Typo aesthetic that you are thinking of is the Peter Steele aesthetic. That permeated the music, the sound, the subject matter, and those sorts of things. But everybody else came from other bands, so.
Right? It's just a lot of fun, and it's just cool to be able to talk to like Johnny about KISS, because even though I don't listen to them on a daily basis, don't consider myself a big fan anymore, I can't help but them being such a part of my life that I can answer most of these questions. Max, you want to start?
Sure. Which member of KISS played in a band called the Muff Divers?
You got the buzzer and bell ready? Mm-hmm. The Muff Divers, Ace Frehley. All right, Thomas, you're up.
Who was Gene Simmons' tongue insured by?
Oh, that's right. I'm thinking the auction house, but I'm just going to say Sotheby's.
So according to the liners of Kiss Originals, it says Freud's of London.
Ah, that's right. That's right.
So, which my mom had to explain to me at 11 years old, was obviously satirical because there's a big company called Lloyd's of London, and Mr. Freud is somebody who treated crazy people on it, and I didn't get it, but I will always remember that Freud's of London.
That's cool. Cool. Melita?
Hello.
Hello.
So, how many Kiss shows did Vivian Vincent perform with Kiss?
That's probably what he goes by now.
Oh, sure.
Oh, that's a tough one. How many? I don't know. I can't believe you pull these. How many shows with Kiss did he perform? So that would be Creatures, tour, and Lick It Up tour. I don't know.
Above 100. So a little hint for you.
What's that?
Above 100.
Say 100 to 75.
148
Oh.
shows.
Okay.
You got that wrong.
Max.
Okay. Which Kiss member played in a band called Cathedral?
Oh, that would be Gene Simmons. And his birthday's tomorrow. Yay.
Happy birthday, Gene.
All right, Thomas.
In the Kiss comic book that came out in 1977, there's a character that they basically get their talismans to become superheroes from. He's like a big chubby guy. He's bald. He's got a white beard. He's wearing a bright yellow T-shirt. What does it say on the bright yellow T-shirt?
Is it Kiss with like spelled with the C and a Z, something like that?
On the shirt, no.
Okay, I got that one wrong. What was it?
It says "Play hard, play fair, nobody hurt." And the B trivia is, who is that inspired by?
Ooh, nobody gets hurt. I have no idea. What was it?
Sean Delaney.
Oh wow!
And apparently, that's something that he used to say to everybody all the time too.
That would make sense. Okay, Melita.
Whose hand appears on the cover of the album Music from the Elder?
I know it's not Vivian Vincent. It would be that was easy. Paul Stanley's hand.
Correct.
Name 2 songs Gene Simmons spits blood before performing.
2. Well, he does. God of Thunder is one of them, and okay, so pre God of Thunder. 100,000 years. Whoa! All right, Thomas.
On Rock and Roll Over, there are 3 songs that are written by Simmons, Stanley, and one other person who is not in the band. Who is that person?
Is it? Oh, I'm jumping too far ahead. Was it Sean Delaney?
Yeah, I was going to say I already gave you the answer, but
yeah. I was going to jump and say Adam Mitchell, but that was Creatures era. Okay, Melita, your last chance.
Which member of Kiss asked the band for their autographs at his audition, just in case he never saw them again?
My favorite drummer of all time, Mr. Eric Carr.
Correct.
All right. Well, we're gonna end with some a cover that I heard probably before a lot of people on that day in Kentucky. I was on the van with you guys. The guy from Liars and Wait was in the back. I remember we were smoking.
Must have been cocktail hour.
And yeah, it was. And it was 4th of July, but you played Unholy Roller, Shout of the Devil. As in, you gave me that tape and I took it home, and I had a 4th of July party on the 5th. I played that thing and drove people crazy because I played nothing else but that. But I'm like that. So we'll get to Shout of the Devil, but let's talk about Los Angeles for a minute, which is, I saw you in Los Angeles on a night that my only time I went to Hollywood was for the Cleopatra 10-year anniversary party. And Thomas was DJing, and we had dinner at the Rainbow before, but that night I met Kim Fowley, and I didn't believe it was Kim Fowley, and I said, Thomas, this guy's telling me this, and this. Now, Kim wrote 2 songs for Kiss.
I still have Tim's neon green business card from that night.
Yeah, had the palm tree on it. I'm like, and Thomas said, that's absolutely him. He did the Runaways, and I'm like, wow, I better talk to this guy. And he called me constantly up until he called me on his deathbed just to say thank you. And it was an honor to, I mean, you talk about as weird as you can get. That guy was as weird as you can get, and I loved it. But you had a story that I liked that you posted one time, and that's why I asked you if you're going to write a book about parking a car in front of the whiskey.
Yeah. So, again, like I said, we always toured in this 16-passenger van, and we learned all the tricks that there were. And there were a bunch of clubs, bigger clubs like Limelight in New York or the Whiskey, where you really wanted to have your van parked directly in front of the club. But these are all, big cities where that parking's at a premium. But we figured out that if you get there fairly early in the day, if you can, and just park there and just wait. And just like, when somebody leaves a parking place, you move in and then you back up a little bit and you just keep jockeying until you finally get that place that you want. And we were playing that game with the Whiskey, and we're parked exactly one space away from where we want to be. And but there's a Yugo in that space. And I think we were still parked illegally too. We were like in a towaway, but we were all like hanging in the van. It was cool.
Was it a particular color? Did that Yugo have a color?
I remember it as being kind of a orangey red, but I could be wrong. That's what it is in my mind.
I think you're right.
And but anyhow, we see these guys walking down the street, and Ronny Valeo, who is the original guitarist for the band, Ronny slept through everything. He slept across the country, through this, through that. And, and he was a notorious collector of pornographic videos, pornographic magazines, just loved everything related to all that stuff. They had a whole room of autographs of Christy Canyon and those sorts of things. But anyhow, we're watching, and these guys are coming down the street, and they've got a couple like bimbos behind them, and you could kind of smell the whole like, they just like came from somewhere where they were filming something weird. And I'm looking at it, and Eric Peterson, who was playing drums for us at the time, goes, "Dude, is that Ron Jeremy?" And all of a sudden, Valeo, who's like completely asleep in the back, darts up, and he's sitting up, and he goes, "Holy shit, man, that's Jeremy, and that's Al Goldstein," who published Screw right next to him. And in theory, he should have known who the bimbos behind them were. But anyhow, so they're coming down, and I'm like, holy shit, is Ron Jeremy going to get this fucking Yugo? And he does. He looks, and he knows exactly what we're doing, too. And he's looking, and I'm like, behind the wheel, and he's like, doing the whole motion, you want this parking space sort of thing? Okay, hold on just 1 second. And so, yeah, Ron Jeremy gave Electric Hellfire Club his parking space.
Seeing those two well-dressed men walking down the Sunset Strip.
Yeah.
I feel bad for Ron. Max and I had spent some time with him. So, yeah, it is what it is. So, and you, before we wrap up here, first of all, I want to say thank you. Always great. We always go long, but that's fine. You had a Nikki Sixx story?
So, the first time that we played at the Whiskey, we played a showcase. There were like 22 ska bands headlined by Skanky Pickle on the bill, but our booking agent had gotten us on before everybody else so that people from labels could come watch us. And 4 people showed up, but one of them was Brian McNellis from Cleopatra, who showed up and went back and said, we need to sign these guys. So we did get signed at that show. But that trip to LA was particularly ill-fated because Ronnie had one of those a Charvel that was made before they were made in Japan and this and that. But anyhow, his guitar got stolen out of our van. We were staying at one of these horrible motels on just off Sunset, and had the van parked so that you could not get any of the doors open except for the driver's seat. And the only thing they could get out was his guitar, which he stupidly left in the van. So I took him down, and we went to a music store that was not Guitar Center on Sunset. And, guitar people out there, if you know what ESP guitars are, back in the old days, they wouldn't let large retailers sell their stuff. They wanted a mom and pop store that represented them. And this little dinky place on Sunset was the ESP dealer for the area. And we went in there, and Ronny, was, Wisconsin Italian, and loved, all the Godfather movies along with his Thorn stuff, and between Scarface and whatever. We walk in there, and there's an ESP guitar on the wall that has Al Pacino with the praying hands in front of his face. There's Godfather 2 on it. It's custom-made ESP guitar. It's like, if he could have imagined a guitar, that's what he would have wanted. So I bought the guitar, and he eventually paid me back for it. Not long after that, he quit the band and started a band called the New Mafia, based on his guitar, I guess. But cut to many years later, Ronny has, been out of the band, gone to prison. He and I have, reconnected, and we're friends. But he's always got a story, that you go by his record store or this or that, and he's got, oh, dude, I got a story I got to tell you. By this time, I'm living in Florida, and he's on the phone with me and goes, dude, you got to hear this story. He said, I finally sold the Godfather guitar, and I had somebody, because I don't know how to do eBay, and someone was doing this and this and this, and he said, and I get this phone call, and the phone call was from some secretary who wanted me to hold for Nikki Sixx. He said, I think somebody's pranking me. The question that I'm asking, I'm like, how the hell did they get your phone number from eBay? He said, I have no fucking idea. And, but Nikki Sixx was at Royal Recorders, which was in Lake Geneva, which is very, very close to Wisconsin. And a lot of really big bands used to record there. And it was kind of a secret place where people would go to rehearse or record or things like that. And he had heard about the guitar that was for sale, and he didn't want to go through eBay. He wanted to talk to this guy about it. And he told him the story behind the guitar, and that is that it was made for C.C. DeVille. And C.C. DeVille went through a rough patch himself. And I'm actually friends with a woman who was actually his girlfriend at the time. And I can't tell you who that is, but suffice it to say, the man was, had a little bit of a crack addiction, and things went very, very downhill, and he lost his deposit that he had put in on his ESP custom made guitar, and it went for sale. And supposedly it was only days that it was on on the floor when we came in and bought it. And he was so fucking pissed, and blah, 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 blah. The end of story. Nikki Sixx knows the story. They were friends. He's going to buy the guitar for him. He's going to, bring the Godfather guitar back home to C.C. DeVille. And, and Ronny's talking to Nikki Sixx, and it all of a sudden, he says, yeah, well, I used to, the way I got it is I used to play in this band called Electric Hellfire Club. And Nikki Sixx goes, wait a second. Is that Thomas Thorn guy? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I don't like that fucking guy. And, and the funny thing is that my wife put it perfectly, and that is to imagine that Nikki Sixx has an opinion of you, and I think about it, and I'm like, what in the hell could he possibly have against me? What does he know about me or anything like that? And the guy's supposed to be, like, in theory, sober and not saying shit like that, just like, just off the cuff of whatever. And then I thought about it, and then I thought, I know why he doesn't like me, because I remember when that record that you're talking about came out, and Jen from Genitortures handed it to Tommy Lee, and because the crew was actually playing a Genitortures video as part of their warm up for the crowd, and not long after she told me she gave it to them, they recorded a new version of "Shout at the Devil." And you remember that time. And the thing is that if you listen to my version of "Shout at the Devil," I'm not saying it's better or anything like that. I'm saying it's definitely faster and it's a little more revved up. And if I was in that band and that was my signature song and I heard that, I think I'd hate that guy too.
I have that version you're talking about also. So yeah, I know what you're talking about. Wow. That's a really good story.
It is.
Well, thanks, man. Is there anything else you want to share before we part?
No, I mean, you know what? We are playing Devil's Night at the Orpheum in Tampa, and we're gonna make history yet again. Don't be sitting there saying, "Oh, well, Thomas is back. He's making more music. He's touring. He's doing this." I am not touring. I may do one, maybe two shows a year at this point. It will not be in your town. I can guarantee that. So come on down. We'll have lots of fun and enjoy ourselves the way we used to, except without me breaking out in handcuffs at the end of the night.
Well, that'll be something new. All right. Well, once again, Thomas Thorn from the Electric Hellfire Club. Thank you. Thank you, Max. Melita, thank you. Thanks, JSIN Unholy Roller, for his help with the production. And Carl, overseas, thanks for your support, man. I know you're going to share this one.
Absolutely.
And I'll talk to you soon, Thomas. Have a great
All
day.
right.
This is Shout at the Devil.
Thanks for having me.
Rock and roll.
All right.
You've been listening to the MK Ultrasound podcast from Chicago, Illinois with your host, Alexander. Please click like and subscribe and share with your friends. Check us out online at mkultramagazine.com. And on behalf of the MK Ultrasound staff, thanks for listening, everybody.